Hello and welcome back to another update where I cover the latest developments throughout the front line in the Russo-Ukrainian war. It is your host Weep Union, and in this one we have several developments. The Russians have managed to advance within Chasiv Yar near the industrial zone, where they've managed to gain a foothold within the industrial buildings. In the Donetsk region, the Russian Pokrovsk offensive has begun, and they have also managed to make several developments within Kurova and on the southern flank, where they've managed to encircle Ukrainian forces in that direction. In turn, the Ukrainians have managed to regain some positions near Darino in the Kursk region. Starting out in the south, the Russians managed to encircle Ukrainian forces by launching simultaneous attacks towards Konstantinopolsk in the east and Sukhyali in the west. The Russians gained a foothold in both of these settlements, leaving only one road in and out of them in the direction of Yantarne across the river line. Therefore, the Ukrainian forces in between these two settlements, and including these two settlements, are in an operational encirclement, where the only supply line is within the Russian firing control near Hihant in the center between the two settlements. Based on this, the Russians are moving to cut off Uspenivka and the remaining settlements in the small pocket to the east by capturing several positions along the river line, moving up towards Yantarne and then up towards Dashne from the south, combined with an assault from the north through Staryterny. In the Kurova direction, the Russians made an advance along the residential area, capturing the remaining parts north of the small apartment complex area here to the south of Kurova, where fighting continues over that as well. Therefore, we see that there are several developments here in the direction of Kurova, where the Russians are looking to close off the pocket for the final time, where the objective is to gain control over Dashne, Yantarne, Sukhyali, Konstantinopolsk, and thereby gaining control over the pocket to the south and Kurova itself by cutting off completely any Ukrainian forces within it, and this, based on this, will force a Ukrainian withdrawal from the city. In the direction of the Pokrovsk section of the front line, the Russians launched several attacks, and through these they managed to align the front line with the Ukrainian defensive line south of Pokrovsk, where the Russians can attack the settlements from the direction of Dashenske, Selene, Vidroshenya, and they've also managed to flank the Ukrainian positions near Novopustina, gaining a foothold in the fortified positions in the area. The Russians are here looking to separate the southern flank of the Pokrovsk defensive line to capture Novopustinka and Novotroitske, where they've managed to cut off the connection between the two settlements of Shevchenko and Novopustinka by capturing the fortified positions of the Ukrainians in between the two. At the same time, the Russians continue to advance along the railways towards Vitroshenya and Shevchenko. The Russians have consolidated their gains north of Petrivka and Ryorivka through Selidove, where they can now push towards Dashenske, where they already have a foothold in Lysivka in the east. This will allow the Russians to advance from Lysivka and connect with Dashenske, where several fortified positions are located north of these settlements in the high ground. So we see heavy fighting is taking place along the defensive line of Pokrovsk from the south, and we can say with this that the Battle of Pokrovsk has begun. We see here in the direction of Pushkina, the Russians made a small advance south of the settlement here as well. The positional fighting continues, where their main efforts are in the direction of Velikonovosilka in the south, Kurova in the center, and Pokrovsk in the north. The objective of the Russians is to gain full control over the southwestern region of the Donetsk region, and this will allow the Russians to then focus the entirety of their forces in the Pokrovsk direction, while the rest remain on the defensive. Pointing to the significance of Pokrovsk is not just related to flanking the Sloviansk-Konstantinivka line in the northeast of the Donetsk region, but it is also tied to the fact that there are no prepared defensive positions west of Pokrovsk. This is pointed out by the Major General of the Bundeswehr, who is the head of the Special Staff for Ukraine in Germany. He says, "We must expect that the Russian armed forces will try again to increase the intensity of their combat operations before the inauguration of the designated US President Donald Trump on January 20th. If the important logistic hub of Pokrovsk falls, the Russian attackers could easily advance further west, because there are no prepared defensive positions and the terrain makes defense difficult. The Russian army is like a bucket wheel excavator, digging its way through an open cast mine, slowly at first, now faster." And that is certainly true. For the month of November, the Russians managed to capture 775 square kilometers of net gains of territories controlled in Ukraine and the Kursk region. This is 59 square kilometers more than in the month of October, which was subsequently more than that of September, which was subsequently more than that of August. And as such, we see that a Russian advance, the pace of advance, is increasing month by month as they capture more and more territory. Yet the Russians have yet to capture Kurova, Velika Novosilka, and Pokrovsk, following which by each of these it will increase significantly, mostly with the capture of Pokrovsk. That will completely switch the situation up. If the Battle of Vuhledar, the fall of Vuhledar, doubled the Russian advance speed, then Kurova and Velika Novosilka will each do the same, and the Battle of Pokrovsk will increase it tenfold. What about Chasiv Yar? In the direction of Chasiv Yar, the Russians have advanced within the industrial zone. The industrial zone is very small, but it has mines. This means that there's a lot of underground space within it, and based on this, the fighting, which has continued over the mine for many weeks now, is now reaching a new phase where the Russians are slowly advancing through it. If the Russians gain full control of it, they'll gain control over the central parts of Chasiv Yar, which will eventually lead to the capture of the city. Although I don't expect for it to significantly speed up the Russian advances in the area, instead it will just simply increase the casualties of the Ukrainian forces. This means with the Russians gain control over Chasiv Yar, they'll be able to make full use of the high ground gains and take advantage of it to potentially gain control over the Siversk section of the front line. But that is about all for the territorial gains. The majority of the advantages gained through Chasiv Yar would be to be able to constantly shell the cities of Kostantinivka, Drushkivka, Kramatorsk, and Sloviansk. These are all cities which would require a large concentration of Ukrainian forces, and therefore there would be a lot of casualties among the Ukrainian ranks. The more casualties the Ukrainians take, the less likely they are to be able to launch offensive operations, and the more their defensive operations will be weakened. And if they at the same time need to send additional forces to defend here in the Dnipropetrovsk region with poor terrain and no defensive positions, suddenly you get the full picture that the Ukrainians are already significantly struggling just to hold to the front line as it is, yet the situation will become drastically more difficult, exponentially more difficult in the coming weeks, with the fighting over Velika Novosilka, Kurova, and Chasiv Yar getting closer to an end, and the Battle of Pokrovsk beginning today. In the Kursk region, the Russians recently captured Darino. Now the Ukrainians are launching a counterattack, attempting to regain control over the settlement. With the geolocated footage, we see that the Ukrainian forces managed to gain a foothold within it. According to the reports, the Ukrainians launched an armored assault. They managed to drop off their infantry, after which the Russians launched some FPV drones hitting the vehicles, but the infantry were disembarked. Therefore, they are now present within the settlement. The Russians are working to launch a counterattack to regain control over Darino, but so far it has not happened. So based on this, we see positional fighting continues in the Kursk region, and the first advance this month goes to Ukraine. And that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, check out my Patreon and YouTube membership for additional content. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.